All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching, whenever you are watching or listening. We give you the warmest of greetings, and let me tell you that the warmth is even warmer today because Albert is back, everybody. Yes, that's right. The young man who likes to see the world has seen another part of it, and now he's come back. Albert, where were you? Share with everyone your exotic travel.
Oh, I was in South Korea for a week.
Yeah, you were in South Korea. Come on.
Wasn't too long, wasn't too short. Just enough time just to get away for a little bit.
Look at you jetting to Asia for just a week. And here is a picture of...
Here's one of the streams that I went to.
One of the streams?
Albert, thank you.
Oh, wow, look at that.
It wasn't Mark's YouTube live stream, though.
No, well, I will just say this,
quite.
Albert. You clicking pictures of... Oh, these are like urban parks. That's why you like them. Is that it? Yeah. And this is that Seoul at night?
Yep, exactly. This is in Mapo. That's where I stayed.
Wow.
My hotel was
Look
in
at you,
this area.
kid.
Is King Sejong. Apparently
King Sejong, everybody. Come on for King Sejong. He was the first king, was he?
Oh, well, it seemed like it. I wasn't sure. I can't really...
And this is their new hoax.
Oh, okay. Well,
is,
and that is the great one, Albert.
Yeah, that's in the secret garden at Changdeokgung Palace. And here's other pictures of the... I got 30,000 steps that day. So this day was... The palace is huge.
Oh, you were really cooking. Yeah, you were really... wow.
There's never been anything like this.
What is that is...
This is the front entrance, when you walk in. But there's
to his old palace or to the king's old palace?
Yeah, to that palace. Yep. And they charge you to go into the secret garden inside as well. So they double charged me in there, but it's fine. It's fine.
Well, but it's worth it, right? I mean,
yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
Right. Okay. Shadow producer Calvin Long wants to know why you didn't smile in your pictures. Is there?
Oh yeah, I never smile. Sorry.
Yeah, that's kind of his thing. But you and the food you went for, you liked it. You
very good. I ate some exotic foods. I did not want to show it on stream. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I'm disgusted by some of the stuff that I did see on your.
Yeah,
Instagram,
I did post it on Instagram. Yeah, so I'm not sure if
it's just that the especially as someone who, as you're aware, blanches from animal cruelty. Some of the Asian delicacies can be particularly difficult for me to even witness. And I saw you with like a live octopus on the plate, and it was I don't know if that revoked my chances of getting the rod of equity,
It was great. I loved it.
Well,
I am the holder of it, so I don't know if I could, because I help you bestow it upon others.
It is true that you have not yet received. You missed last week. Kim got it. Kim, after kind of holding out, and I even got, let me see if I can find it. I got some emails saying that she essentially shouldn't have gotten it because she smack talked about it. She was like, she kind of played it too cool for school.
Yeah, but you gotta, just
you gotta receive it. They say receive the rod of equity and mercy. You've got to receive it. It's not cool if you're not. But
receive the rod of equity and
there you
mercy.
Go. And then, but again, it's done. Let the Spirit guide her.
May the Spirit guide you in wisdom and grace.
Yeah, I'm just,
that by your service and ministry, justice and mercy, may be seen in all the earth.
Well, I was looking for the short version, but thank you. All right.
Well, I'm glad I got this news today and not during the trip. That would have kind of, harshened my my experience over there across the
across the world.
Ocean. Yeah.
By the way, speaking of travel, did you see that SFO was shut down for 3 hours this weekend? Passengers evacuated. Flights were diverted. There was a package, a mystery package. And because of that, they had to shut down the whole airport.
I think it was Terminal 2.
Oh, it wasn't the whole airport, just Terminal 2?
Yeah, just Terminal 2. So, unfortunately, if you do see like something that is just a mystery bag, an unclaimed bag, and somebody reports it, it will shut down the whole airport. It'll delay all the flights. It's terrible.
Wow. They cleared the food court. I mean, is there anything?
What?
Yeah, I know. In America, the food court, please don't touch our food court.
There's never been anything like this.
Anyway, it's all's well now at SFO. And please welcome Kim back to the show, everyone.
Kim, how are you?
She was... you've missed a little bit of Albert's vacation photos and recounting a bit of his vacation. He was gone for a week. He likes to take those week-long vacations to Korea.
He's a young man. He's a jet setter. What can I say?
Albert, please tell me it wasn't one of those sex vacations that Americans take to Asia. Please tell me that. That is just not cool.
I'll keep everything private with what I did out there.
But you can say, can you just make a please? You can say you're not involved in that crap.
No, I'm not.
Okay, all right, please. I want to make that
traveled
clear.
with a friend going over. It's fine.
No, okay, exactly. You travel with a lovely companion. I have stuff over the weekend. I'd love to share. Let me just tell you what's coming up, and then I will just share a couple of things and thoughts, and maybe I can wave you off something that is getting a lot of publicity that I think is just overhyped maybe a little bit. I was going to mention that coming up, and this is in the second hour, we have a really interesting conversation about medical breakthroughs and oversight in the medical area from a guy who is a brilliant medical ethicist and doctor. He comes out of some of the best institutions of higher learning, Stanford among them. But we'll get into his new book, which is about just this. It's about overseeing medical breakthroughs and medical research, and even medical breakthroughs when it comes to drugs, when it comes to medicines, when it comes to medications, when it comes to COVID. So he's not a COVID-centric guy, so I don't want you to think this is a COVID-centric guest. It's actually quite provocative. His book is From Oversight to Overkill, Inside the Broken System That Blocks Medical Breakthroughs and How We Can Fix It. So we'll talk to Dr. Simon Whitney, in the second hour. Also, a Law and Disorder that runneth over. A lot of stuff in Law and Disorder. I've got that update on that DC cop and the Proud Boys, a Pittsburgh situation with the Tree of Life Church, the J6 Trump people, and where that sits. I've got news of pot. I've got a lot of marijuana news. In fact, I kind of had to pare it back. I like to keep you posted on things,
Where
but
are my weed smokers
don't
at?
want the show to be, all about marijuana. So.
Is an itty bitty bit of weed?
Yeah, I did put an itty-bitty bit in the second hour. Smash the like button like a boss, if you would.
With your iron rod.
Hit us with a thumbs up. And before I got a couple of emails that were interesting. I don't know. Maybe this is worth looking at. If I can find.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Hi, Mark. We love your show. My husband, thank you very much for that. My husband, Peter, and I think this is kind of funny. My husband Peter and I think you're very well spoken.
That's true.
What?
we have an argument you can settle. Do you pronounce it default or default? This is very interesting. As in, the U.S. may default on its debt if an agreement isn't reached. Thank you, Stephanie and Peter, San Jose. My husband says the lady on Face the Nation says default. Well, it is default. It is not default.
Default.
There you go. But keep playing it. I think
People
that's
who default on their mortgage repayments may have their home repossessed. Default.
Yeah.
Default.
So I say default.
So we believe the British guy. That's like
no,
because he's British, like he's the pinnacle of that's the truth.
It is.
People who default on their mortgage repayments
Let it run,
may
Albert.
have
Let it
their
run.
home repossessed.
Maybe there's an American version. Usually I go American. Here it is. There it is. American.
Default.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
People
so
who
that's
default on their mortgage repayments may have their home repossessed.
So I like the British, of course, because I'm drawn to the British people.
Yes,
yes. But there
we have processes and protocols and standards.
Yeah. So it's default. Is what I would say to you. But I'm anxious to hear the Face the Nation lady. Do we have that, Albert? No, I didn't give you that.
I would have thought it was one of those either ors, that both that they're both correct.
I'm sure they're both acceptable, but I say default. I don't say default. Oh, here she is. All right. Nice job.
Boiled over as talks broke down between the White House and Republicans who were trying to hammer out a deal to raise the federal government's borrowing limit before a looming June 1st deadline.
Please say
President
default.
Biden said this morning he'll speak personally with House Speaker Kevin
Waiting
McCarthy
on
on his flight
default.
home
Yes.
from the G7
Blah, blah,
summit
blah.
in Japan
Default,
in an effort
please.
to break the impasse.
Default or
A
default?
window for action is narrowing. Treasury
Here we
Secretary
go.
Janet Yellen predicts the country may only have enough
Or
cash to pay another week and a half.
we will
worth of
have to
bills.
what on
And
our
if the
bills?
U.S. misses a payment, they'll have to make hard choices.
Oh,
A default
God.
would threaten the global
There it
economy.
is. Default.
Default, yeah.
Default. She's wrong. It's
Yeah,
default.
It doesn't sound right at all.
But so that's the way it is. But I also feel like it's a bit like insurance. It's not insurance, it's insurance, right? Did you get insurance on your house? But Brett used to say insurance, and I certainly didn't, ever correct him.
What?
That's an odd place to put the emphasis.
Yeah, but there is it's almost a Southern thing, I think, when they say insurance. You have insurance,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's insurance. I kind of put default in that same category.
Yeah.
So some people say default, like they
Are
say
you gonna
insurance.
default on that loan?
Yeah, you're going to default. If you default, will you have insurance to cover you?
If you default, you're gonna have to make some hard choices.
Mm-hmm. Well, just because we're talking about default, let me speak to it quickly. You smash the like button, and while you do, let me tell you about what is happening on Wall Street.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Bankers and brokers, trading platforms prepping for disruption to the Treasury market. Broader volatility is expected. They're game planning how payments on Treasury securities would be handled and how critical funding markets would react. Ensuring sufficient technology, staffing capacities, and cash to handle the high trading volumes, checking potential impact on contracts with clients should this nation go into default. Big bond investors have cautioned that maintaining high levels of liquidity is important to withstand potential violent asset price adjustments. The market would continue to function, but interest would likely not accrue for delayed payments. The securities industry and financial markets, this is SIFMA, a leading industry group, has a playbook which details how Treasury market stakeholders like the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the FICC, the Fixed Income Clearing Corporation, clearing banks, and Treasury dealers would all communicate ahead of and during the days of potential missed Treasury payments. They're saying they have considered several scenarios. They think they would likely see the Treasury buy time to pay back bondholders by announcing ahead of a payment that it would be rolling those maturing securities, overextending them one day at a time. That would allow the market to continue to function, but interest would likely not accrue for delayed payments. The most disruptive scenario, the Treasury fails to pay both principal and coupon, does not extend maturities. The unpaid bonds could no longer trade and would no longer be transferable on the Fedwire securities service that's used to hold, transfer, and settle treasuries. Each scenario would likely lead, they say, to significant operational problems. This is from Reuters. And require manual daily adjustments in trading and settlement processes. So, in past debt ceiling standoffs in 2011 and 2013, Fed staff and policymakers developed a playbook that would likely provide a starting point, with the last and most sensitive step being to remove defaulted securities from the market altogether. They all say that they're monitoring the situation. They've modeled a variety of scenarios, and they're trying to figure out what to do. They are looking at, again, mortgage, commodity markets. The contagion of default would spread to all of these markets, right? Investors would no longer have confidence in the treasuries. I mean, this is the most, I'd suggest it's the safest, most secure investment in the world, perhaps, American treasuries. But now you'd be in a totally different place. And these games, if you view it all as a game, these games do lead you to all kinds of market reverberations and repercussions. It is not the kind of thing that has to happen for it to have an effect on the U.S. market and for the U.S. credit to be affected. They say short-term funding markets would likely freeze up. Even a short breach of debt, again, could lead to a spike in interest rates, a plunge in equity prices, and covenant breaches in loan documentation and leverage agreements. So short-term funding markets would freeze up. That's according to Moody's.
You think they'll really play hardball all the way till the end with this one?
I think that I really can't imagine they will. But I think that the type of politician involved in these negotiations now, not so much McCarthy, but the strings pulling McCarthy, the hard right of the Republican Party, I think there is a quality of political terrorism almost that we've not seen in, certainly recent memory. So
we've never seen anything like this.
We've never seen anything like this.
There's never been anything like this.
Right. So, anyway, that's the latest on that. And, I mean, that's of the moment. We're watching that, hour to hour. So we'll see.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I saw a documentary film which may be popping up on your, I think it's on Netflix. Maybe it was, they run together. Last night we stayed up and we watched Succession.
Oh.
Yes, we're up to date on Succession. I won't say anything. I won't spoil it. It's so good. It's hard to believe that it's going to end next week. One more episode.
What?
But yes, I know. But you can jump on and watch it. It's kind of it's a fun ride, and there are a lot of parallels to the culture right now. Anyway, one of the things that's probably being served to you is this Donna Summer documentary. It was produced, I think, and directed by her daughter. I was excited to see it. And Donna Summer, disco diva, she's often referred to as her. I think the power of Donna Summer was probably with that dance music of the mid to late 70s, I Feel Love, Bad Girls.
Was she Hot Stuff?
Hot Stuff, exactly. That album had everything on it, just great stuff. And she was synonymous with that subculture of the Studio 54s, you know, the disco world, right? Her music was not pure disco at all. This will come as no surprise to you. She comes out of the gospel world, just like Whitney Houston did, just like Mavis Staples did, probably Etta James, same thing. The great vocalists, they come out of those church environments often. And so she came out of the gospel world, and I guess her parents were like really tough, born again. It was a strict, God-fearing household, but not necessarily the most positive environment in which to grow up because of other reasons, I guess. But in any case, she was, terrific. I saw her at Lake Tahoe. Then I'll tell you what the movie and I thought was wrong with it, and then we'll move on. But I saw her at Lake Tahoe at Caesars, I guess, in the show, and I was sitting in the front row, and I remember I was so close.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
I was so close that I could see her set list taped to the floor right in front of her. And she came on, and I would say this about Donna Summer. I didn't even think that she was really into it particularly, but no, listen to me. She was spectacular. I mean, she just opened her mouth, and the power and the perfection that came out of that voice, it was astounding. She blew the back off the place, and I'm telling you, I sat there and I thought, she doesn't really seem particularly into it, but it didn't matter. She was so spilling over with talent that it was spectacular. Yeah. And you got that from her performances. You got a little bit of that in the movie, but I'd suggest the movie, which was informed by a narrative put together by her daughter and also by home movies. I was excited. Those are always cool when you see the home movies. And she shot a lot of movies, and she was clearly a very playful person and kind of liked to mess around. I just didn't think it hung together. I just didn't think there wasn't a through line. There wasn't. I was really disappointed. In fact, I'd give it like a C-.
Oh.
Yeah. That's my thought on the Donna Summer Doc. It's on HBO Max.
I was looking while you're talking at her top songs. I forgot about this one. She Works Hard for the Money.
Oh, that was her huge one.
Yeah,
huge.
Well, that's number 19 on the list.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah. No More Tears is number 16.
Oh,
Bad
Barbra
Girls,
Streisand.
Number 14. MacArthur Park, Dim All the Lights. Hot Stuff comes in at 11.
Wow.
Love to You, Baby. Sunset People.
Look at you with all of the...
This is Casey Kasem on American Top 40 in Hollywood.
That's right. Sunset People came in at number 9 on
Number
Donna
6.
Summer's Top 20.
On the Radio. Remember that?
On the radio was number 6.
Rumor Has It, number 4. Last Dance, number 3.
Last Dance, one of her best.
This is Casey Kasem on American Top 40 in Hollywood.
And we're headed all the way to number 1.
Number 1 is I Feel Love.
Oh, yeah. I Feel Love and Love to Love You, Baby were centerpieces of this movie. They talk a lot about the fact that she was bothered, it seemed, by the fact that Love to Love You, Baby had all of these sort of sounds of sexuality, and she was bothered by that. And
Why?
She was also bothered by being associated with that, because that wasn't who she was.
Right.
But they made a big deal out of the fact that she was playing a character on stage when she performed. And I kept thinking, so what? Why is that a big deal? So I get it. All performers are playing a character in a sense on stage. I mean, I was really disappointed that sort of became this inflection point in the film. She was a beautiful lady. She seemed really, really, I know I can't play any music or video clips without getting a copyright strike. Obviously, that's the reason we're not playing you any of these songs. You did get a little bit of Kim singing I Feel Love, which was nice.
Sorry.
But
well, you see the words, and it's like it immediately triggers the lyrics in your head. That's how like ingrained she is in my brain.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
By the way, it's interesting to hear you go down the various songs that she had, because I would have thought certain songs that you mentioned would have charted higher. There is a moment in the movie where they talk about, I'm not spoiling anything, believe me, the movie it's unspoilable. And that's not just because I didn't particularly like it, but it's not that kind of movie where there are any spoilers. But the success of Last Dance, which I would have thought was her biggest, but and her biggest, what did you say it was?
It was. I clicked off the website.
The number one song was what was it, Kim?
This is Casey Kasem on American Top 40 in Hollywood.
It was "I Feel Love."
I Feel Love, one of her early ones.
Love to Love You, Baby was at number 10.
So this is a small point, and I promise you I will move on. But real quick, I guess there was a big controversy with. She had Last Dance out, and it was doing really well, and it was like just soaring into the top 10. And she'd done a duet with Barbra Streisand, "Enough Is Enough," or "No More Tears." No, Enough is Enough.
I remember that.
There was a big argument with her manager because she didn't want to release "Enough Is Enough" until they'd gotten all the charge out of Last Dance that they could. When you don't want to compete with yourself, essentially, is what they were saying. But there was no stopping it. They released "Enough Is Enough," and it did hurt Last Dance's ability to move to number one. And Last Dance peaked at number 2, I guess, in Billboard. That stuff is always
which is interesting that they would do that, because then you have somebody like Taylor Swift coming along. And didn't she have, like all 10 of the top 10 billboards? Like,
yeah, you're right. So it doesn't always matter, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Last Dance was the biggest and always the last song at the disco. That's true. Oftentimes. I was a big disco, as you know, DJ. I was not quite in the heart of the Donna Summer thing. That was before me. But like the Studio 54 thing is a little before me. But I was like a mixed guy.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Exactly. I was. Although my club put out a newsletter, and I was featured in the newsletter, and it was big exposure for me. You can imagine. It was really a launch for my career. And I've told you before about how I was corrupted in that club. So I won't tell that story again.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
I had I had my moment of corruption in that club, financial corruption, just to be clear about it, where I took a tip, and I never thought I would take a tip.
Oh.
I've told you that story, though, haven't I?
No. I haven't heard this one.
Albert, you've heard it, though.
What?
You've heard the story where I was in a club, and the person offered me money to play a song, and I said, no, it's my job.
Yeah, I think you did tell me that. That was on the Station X, though.
Oh,
I was on Station X. Okay, so I'll tell it just quickly here, because this is my moment of corruption. Then we'll stop for Kim's news, and then Courtney's here with Mark's Murder Mystery Monday. So I was a DJ in the club with the raised, platform, and you're up there, and you're mixing, and everything was perfect. And I've got a few stories from that, but I'll just tell you this one quickly. So one night, somebody comes up and says, can you play, let's just say it was Donna Summer, Sunset People. And I say, okay, I'll get to it. And they handed me a $10 bill, as I recall. And I handed it back. And I said, no, it's my pleasure to play the music. It's my job, and I'm all too happy to play it. You don't need to give me any money. So one of the cocktail waitresses was there, how they kind of wait until somebody in their section needs something, and they're waiting by the DJ booth, not in it, but like leaning against it. And she saw it. And she said, Mark, do you think when somebody leaves me a tip, I say, oh, no, it's my job to bring you cocktails. Take the tip, Mark. That's a tip, and you're allowed to take it. I thought, wow, she's so right.
My bad. I'm sorry.
The next night, somebody comes in, and says, can you play, whatever, we'll say Donna Summer's Sunset People.
And you said that'll be $50.
I had just played it, okay? I had just played it, like 20 minutes prior. And, when you're a DJ, you have a set going, all that crap, I said, I can't play it again. It'll ruin my set and blah, blah, blah. And it's just not the way we work. I just cannot play it again. I'm so sorry you missed it. I'll play it again tomorrow night. And they left and they came back with a napkin. And on the napkin was written the name of the song. And $50 was in the napkin.
That's not fake. That's real.
And I thought back to the night before, and I took that napkin, and I took that money, and I put their song right on. And that, to me in my mind, was the moment at which I was completely corrupted. So there you have it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I wear my corruption openly. Smash the like button like a boss. We have a lot to get to.
Smash it with your iron
I
rod.
mentioned in the second hour, we've got a big law and disorder. There's a lot going on. We're watching, obviously, the unfolding debt crisis. If we can get to it, That's Rich segment that's pretty strong. Courtney is next with an update on the story that did break. In fact, it broke last week, and we gave you a little snippet of it. It's related to the Zodiac killer. She's going to go through all of that and a follow-up on the Idaho murders and that trial, which is just beginning. So we'll have all of that. And then finally, the next hour, Simon Whitney, the doctor who has a new book on the broken system of oversight when it comes to medicine and medical breakthroughs in this country. So there's a lot going on. Kim, anything?
Yes.
No?
No, I got a lot of news.
All right, I love it. Let's go. Let's get on it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you.
I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show, sponsored by the amazing, wonderful people at Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. Let us begin, though, with the situation in Idaho, something that Courtney had reported previously. Now we know the man accused of the murders of 4 University of Idaho students will be standing trial in October. A grand jury indicted Brian Kohberger, pictured here, in the brutal murders of Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin at their college house last November. Kohberger's trial set to begin October 2nd and will last, they think, about 6 weeks. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott is running for president. It is official. He made the announcement, the Republican, this morning from his hometown of North Charleston. Scott reflected on his upbringing in a single-parent household, claiming America is the land of opportunity, not of oppression. An historic conservation deal has been reached by states along the Colorado River and the Biden administration. The Washington Post reports that Arizona, California, and Nevada have agreed to voluntarily conserve 3 million acre-feet of water over the next 3 years in an effort to help stabilize that river. The Colorado River's flow has fallen about 20% over the last 2 decades, causing Lake Powell and Lake Mead, the nation's biggest reservoirs, to drop to critical levels. Democratic Senator Tom Carper of Delaware will not be seeking re-election in 2024. The 76-year-old making the announcement in Delaware this morning. Carper, who spent more than 20 years in the Senate, said he made the decision after a good deal of prayer and introspection.
I think that's a safe seat for Democrats is the idea, right, Kim? Isn't that what they were saying?
I think so. It's Delaware,
Okay.
I mean...
Yeah.
You never know, but hopefully.
Right.
The largest nuclear power plant in Europe is extremely vulnerable as Russia continues to wage war in Ukraine. That is according to the United Nations nuclear watchdog. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency warned the UN needs to protect the plant immediately or face the possibility of a radiation disaster. The FBI is now investigating the deadly shooting of a tribal member by Border Patrol agents in southern Arizona. The shooting happened Thursday in a village just a few miles away from the U.S.-Mexico border. A family member of Raymond Mattia telling News 4 in Tucson, he called Border Patrol for help because several illegal immigrants, he said, or undocumented immigrants, had trespassed into his yard. So again, he's now has been shot. A SpaceX capsule carrying a former NASA astronaut and 3 private citizens has docked with the International Space Station. Spacecraft docked early this morning after launching from Florida Sunday afternoon. The mission, organized by Houston-based Axiom Space, marks the second all-private mission to the space station. And European regulators, let me change the picture here, have fined Meta a record $1.3 billion. The Facebook and Instagram parent was told by Irish Data Protection Commission to stop transferring personal data to the United States. Meta plans to appeal that decision and that $1.3 billion fine.
They're cracking down on the personal data situation in Europe, and Meta is feeling it. I mean, that's a pretty huge judgment. That's
fine. That'll hurt. 1.3 billion. I mean, that makes a statement, right? I mean, that says we don't want you to do what you're doing. And I don't think if they appeal it, it doesn't look really good for them, it would seem.
Right.
Sayonara, sucker.
Right, exactly.
Cough up the money, pal. You're paying it. Well, something happening today in the Bay Area, and that is that Vice President Kamala Harris will be in the Bay Area. Let me get
several people say that they saw her plane, heard her plane, something. Just saw Kamala Harris's plane, says Anonymous. It flew over toward Moffett Field. Yeah.
So, she is in the Bay Area today. She's going to be visiting Applied Materials in Sunnyvale, talking about semiconductor research and development. The White House has poured $280 billion into semiconductor manufacturing in the United States. In December, Applied Materials announced plans to build a next generation of a research and development center in Sunnyvale. So, she is going to be, again, at Applied Materials. Unfortunately, 2 people are dead after a plane crash. This one happened off the coast of Half Moon Bay. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating after this crash Saturday afternoon, about 40 miles off the coast. 2 people were on board a twin-engine plane headed to Hawaii when the pilot declared a mayday and the plane went down in the ocean. Federal officials say both the pilot and the co-pilot did not survive it. And speaking of airports, Orange County, California is home to the angriest airport in the United States. That's according to new rankings from Forbes, which gives the top spot to John Wayne Airport. The rankings are based on an analysis of Twitter activity. Nearly 2/3 of tweets directed at John Wayne Airport are categorized as angry. Many of the complaints are about flight delays, the airport being too noisy, and problems with the TSA. So.
This is Casey Kasem on American Top 40
the
in
angriest
Hollywood.
airports in America. It's number 1, John Wayne Airport.
Yeah,
it's a smaller airport, though. I thought I'm surprised by that.
It's pretty. It's smaller, but it's like the preferred airport I actually go to if I want. Even I'll just drive to LA. I'd rather just not fly to LAX at all. But I'll land in John Wayne and just drive in. But it's nice. I think it was nice.
Yeah, what's the issue? It's just people are. I guess it's a smaller, angrier airport.
All the tweets that come in are angry people. Yeah, they're like, my flight's delayed. They lost my luggage. This is too noisy in here. The TSA sucks. Yeah.
Do you fly, Courtney? Do you fly John Wayne out of John Wayne at all or not?
No. I mean, and what do they have to be angry about? They're right on the beach in Southern California.
What does anybody have anything to be angry about?
What are they angry about?
Yeah.
Chill. You must chill.
No one has the reason to be angry. Everybody's got the anger going.
This report sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards with 3 options to join their wine club.
Come on, Tenuta Wine Club.
Wine Club? Come on. This is great. Here's the story. You can get the Bottle of the Month Club every month, $25. That sends you a bottle every month. Or option 2, you can do the quarterly white wine club. That's hoity-toity. It's $35. Each quarter, you get 2 whites. Or option number 3.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, okay.
You can do the quarterly red wine club. That's $55 every quarter for 2 reds or 1 red, 1 white. That's my option. I like the red one. Yeah.
I like that too.
55 every quarter. That's not so bad.
What's a guilty pleasure you have?
Yeah, my Tenuta Wine Club is my guilty pleasure.
And bonus, if you get to the wine club, you sign up for the wine club, the biggest selling feature is that you get to pick the wine. Most wine clubs, you take what they give you.
That's the way, yes. A lot of wine clubs, they just unload it. Honey, remember when we had our wine club and I just had cases of wine coming to the house? This is before I even knew the Tenuta people.
And it's whatever they want.
And we've drank through all of them.
Yeah.
So.
What he's got going here is a situation.
Tenuta, they let you pick what you want. So you like them, why are you yelling red? You can get it every quarter. Or maybe you decide you like one of their other reds better. Sorry, Mark. And you get that one. So, it could happen.
Yeah, why not? Well, you want to try other things. I don't blame you. You don't have to. You don't have to be an
you
exclusive.
Like the Spencer Christian.
How dare you?
Oh,
how dare you?
What?
I cannot believe it.
Also,
who is having that conversation?
2 people taste for free. So
this is why she didn't. This is why it took so long for her to get the rod of equity and mercy.
It's true, because and you also get discounts on wine and events. And if you commit to paying for a year up front, they'll give you $60 worth of beer to enjoy free whenever you want. Hey,
God, I'm getting buzzed just listening to this.
It was great. I loved it.
Yes.
Our thanks to Tenuta Vineyards. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
I stand corrected. I misspoke. My words upset so many people. My bad. I'm sorry.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
What he's got going here is a situation. There's a reason that this place is fun.
Someone did this to spoil our Christmas.
I have never heard of something like that.
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
Nobody has ever put something like this together that I've ever seen. We've never seen anything like it before.
I have a busy week.
I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created.
God bless America. The end.
Girl, you just woo.
Do I hit it long? Is Trump strong? Huh?
Who is having that conversation?
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
The science is ridiculous.
It's fantastic.
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy. Where are my weed smokers at?
Isn't anybody been a weed?
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Seriously, what the
Right on. Great to have you with us on a Monday. It is our big show. Kim, myself, Albert is back from his exotic trip. And on Mondays, when she's available, we bring in my better half to talk about the thing that she has an abiding interest in, and I have almost no interest in. But she's now got me sort of curious and interested in this true crime world. It all goes down in a segment we call Mark's Monday Murder Mystery.
Welcome to Mark's Murder Mystery Monday.
I think it's Mark's Murder Mystery Monday.
I would just like to note that you got it wrong too.
I got it wrong, which is exactly true. And I usually give Kim a hard time because she doesn't know any of the franchises, barely knows my name. I'm Kim McAllister, and here's the news.
That's
I heard you say Mark's Monday.
But then I blow it after giving her such grief.
That's okay. It's new, so.
I've got. Hey, look, my bad. I'm sorry.
My bad.
All right. I misspoke. All right. Now, Courtney, welcome, first of all.
Hello.
Hello. I wonder if you could get us up to speed on all things related to this world that you are so transfixed by.
Yes. Well, we chatted last week about coming on Monday and talking about the Idaho murders, which Kim just covered, which I'll get into in a second. And then also last week, the Case Breakers, which is a group of, I don't know what you would call them, like sleuth citizens, formally put out a press release that announced that they had found, they had a confirmed suspect for the Zodiac Killer. And so we chatted about that. And then today we're going to review that as well and go in a little bit more depth around that case.
Can I ask you to speak up a little bit, Courtney? I've cranked you up all the way.
Okay. Is that loud enough?
She sounds good to me, but just
well, Albert told me to ask her to speak up.
All right. I'll speak up a little bit.
Yep.
So for the Idaho murders, Brian Kohberger, who is the suspect in custody, was arraigned this morning, and as Kim mentioned, he pled not guilty. Now the trial is set for, I believe it's October 13th at 8:30 in the morning.
Do you have some kind of special alarm on your phone for that?
I only have
October 13th. It's going to start. It's 8:20.
I think it's that. I think it's like the 18th or the 13th.
You could just say October.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have an alarm set, but I will be watching. It's so unfortunate. The victims' families have unfortunately received their degrees posthumously over the last month. May is sort of traditionally when colleges have their graduation. So
sure.
I imagine the last couple of months have been very difficult for the families.
So sad. I've got a story related to that actually in the next hour about victims posthumously. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this has been pushed. Generally, an arraignment or preliminary hearing happens, I think it's like 14 days after an arrest, but they pushed this 6 months. So it's just happened now, and now the trial will start in October. So part of that was one of the roommates, whose name is Bethany Funk. They were trying to get her to come to this preliminary trial, but she really did not want to. So she met with the defense team, I think in Reno, which is where she lives, because they say she has exculpatory evidence that is pertinent to the case. Yeah. But we shall see. I can only hope that this family
get some peace and get some, quote, justice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you were going to, I thought, in addition, this is just happening today, which is why you're updating that. Yep. Thank you. But I'm wondering about this other thing that was breaking news in the last week as well, which is this Zodiac Killer.
Yeah.
And they've identified who the Zodiac Killer was. Now, why, again, review for me the Zodiac Killer, what the Zodiac Killer did, or why the Zodiac Killer had this infamy?
Yep. So it's a pseudonym of an formerly unidentified serial killer who operated. It's funny, people keep saying Northern California, but isn't San Francisco sort of
No, it's considered northern, but you're right. It's technically central California, but yeah.
The cases that they know that are officially attributed to the Zodiac Killer are 68 and 69. Now, this killer, he claims to have killed 37 people over the course of 62 to 69. So there are more deaths that he is claiming to have made. But this is actually described as the most famous unsolved murder case in American history. And most of the murders happened in and around San Francisco. He also wrote at least 20 letters to the media and to police and investigators, and at least 4 of those were ciphers. And the first cipher was fairly, I hate to say this, but it was easier to decode. But the last cipher was actually not decoded until December 5th of 2020.
Wow.
It took AI and supercomputers to decode that. And it has been said that...
There they are on screen.
Yeah.
By the way, cipher, they're telling me, is a ding word? Okay. All right.
It has been said that actually in decoding the last cipher, which if you go down, if you're watching, if you go down a slide, I think I have it. It's called Z340. If you go down one more, sorry. It's got, nope. I did a lot of prep for this.
One more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope.
That's everything, Courtney.
All right.
Albert's saying, is it that one? No?
Yeah, it's the one in the middle. So,
that one?
Yeah, it's that one.
Okay.
So it took AI and a supercomputer, but once they had his name, that was a code that helped to decipher the cipher. And I actually have the text from that cipher listed. It's really interesting. He spells paradise with a D-I-C-E, which a lot of armchair sleuths seem to think connects to gambling or other things. But you can see here some of the work that was done by a group of mathematicians, actually, for the most part, that were able to decode the cipher. But he killed 5 people. He attempted to kill 7. The first 2 people that were killed were a couple that were on a sort of lover's lane, if you will. He went up to the car. He shot the woman and the man, and that was his first murder. That was in 1968. The second murder took place where he approached another car, similar sort of lover's lane. He shot the man and woman. And he then called the cops.
This is on July 4th?
Yeah. Yep. He then called the cops and told them that someone had killed a couple and confessed to the crime. Yeah.
So, he confessed to the crime over the phone, but then he hung up and said, "I'm not." I see. Okay.
Yeah, he hung up.
The whole thing with the Zodiac killer was that he was sort of in the face of the cops all the time, is my sense, right?
Exactly.
He was sort of smack talking the police.
Yeah, he was. He was sending them letters. He was claiming really big things that he had plans to do, bombing certain areas of San Francisco, murdering children. He never did any of that. In fact, people that were close to him said that the murder stopped in late 1969, and that's actually when he got married. So some people think that getting married and starting a life with somebody else was part of a impetus or whatever. It started his not continuing on to be the Zodiac murder. Having said that, he did continue to send letters through 1974. So he continued to taunt the police, and he taunted the police all up and down California. So in fact, in 1974, he sent letters to the Los Angeles Times.
So in total, he killed 6 people. Is that what you said?
He killed 5 people.
5 people.
So he killed 5 people. He killed unfortunately, after that couple, he killed another couple.
There's the letter. Hang on a second. This is the Zodiac speaking.
Yeah.
Like I always said, I am crack proof. If this is not obviously a cipher, I'm just reading it. It was a postcard sent to the LA Times. It just says the LA Times, the address, LA Times, Los Angeles, California, airmail. I'm just telling people who might be listening to the podcast what we're looking at.
Well, what's interesting is that some of the family members that have come forward said that they lived in a, quote, posse with him, and that he actually had a machine that created things that looked like stamps, and that none of them were mailed, that he was delivering these but making it look like they were mailed, because for a lot of his letters, they don't have an address. I mean, I don't.
Have you seen this movie that Randy's talking about with Jake Gyllenhaal, Zodiac?
I haven't, but it's a very famous movie. I think it was done in 2007.
Well, I'm a little surprised, honestly,
You know,
that
Mark,
you've listened to like 40 podcasts on this, probably.
I know. Well, I think that it, sometimes Hollywood can take a little bit of liberty with this story. So when I'm doing the research, I'm listening to a lot of investigators.
She wants the truth. She doesn't want some crackpot movie.
She's too fact-based, you're saying, Kim, to be...
she's a real
doesn't
reporter.
want any artistic
digging
license.
In. That's right.
Okay.
I have a two-pronged question for you, Courtney, if I could.
Let me just ask you, Albert, are the levels more or less right? Are you okay with the levels, sir? Because I can't turn her up any more than I have her turned up.
Yeah, she sounds good.
Okay, cool. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Now the
Level
questions, please, Kim. Go ahead.
Question: is it the bloggers or the podcasters who are saying they've identified this guy, or do the police concur? And is he dead or alive?
Oh, concur's a ding word, and that's a great question. Yes.
So apparently he has secretly been on a list of suspects since 2016. But the FBI will not corroborate him as a suspect. Case Breakers, which is a group of about 40 citizen sleuths, if you will. It's run by a journalist named Tom Colbert and his wife. They have come forward and said that unequivocally he is this gentleman, Gary Francis Post, is the Zodiac Killer. Gary Francis Post died in 2018. So unfortunately, they cannot interview him or arrest him.
That's wild. So in a sense, I don't mean to put it this way, but he kind of did escape justice for his entire life.
Yes, he did. And he went out of his way to try to make this into something really big, right? Like make him infamous, these murders infamous through the letters and the phone calls and the ciphers and everything else that he did to keep people talking about the Zodiac Killer. He even had his emblem, which was the circle with sort of the cross through it. Actually, this couple, when he unfortunately killed this couple, Cecilia and Brian, they were picnicking at a lake. And he walked up to them and he was wearing a hood with sunglasses and like a white cape with his logo on it. I feel like if I saw someone walking up to me with that, I might pick up the blanket and run, but they did not. And he tied them up. And then this is the first murder actually where, I hate to say this, but he stabbed them and did not shoot them. Brian survived it. So Brian was able to give a physical description of the killer. And unfortunately,
Lake Berryessa is what Kim is saying it was.
Yeah, unfortunately, Celia passed. The final murder took place in San Francisco in the Presidio area.
Okay.
And he gets into a cab, the murderer, the Zodiac Killer, and he shoots dead the cab driver. There are 3 teens that are across the street that watch the murder and then watch him taking a piece of clothing and wiping down the car. So they give a witness account of what he looks like. Now, what's really interesting is when the call came into the police, it was reported as an African-American man who had committed the crime, but it wasn't. It was a white man, about 5'10", 170 pounds. And when the police were walking up to the murder scene, a white man, 5'10"-ish, 170 pounds, walked past them. But because it had been called in as an African-American man, they did not stop him.
Wow.
Yep. And so then he mailed that piece of the shirt that I mentioned that the teen saw him taking from the victim. He actually mailed that to the Chronicle with a letter. So when they opened the letter, they had a piece of clothing. They had a letter from the Zodiac. So it definitely connected the Zodiac with that murder, although it was originally thought to be a robbery.
He wasn't the best speller in the world, I'm noticing. Is that right? You mentioned it before.
Yeah.
I guess he was he was good at his awful murderous thing that he did, but his spelling really left something to be desired.
Yeah. I mean, some people think it was like a nod to an earlier serial killer who was misspelling words.
Oh, you think he was deliberately misspelling?
I think that's giving him a lot of credit, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so So it's really interesting that now they have said this. The case breakers, who are the ones that published a press release last week, who have said that Gary Francis Post is the Zodiac killer. They have physical DNA from him. They have received it through people that lived with Gary that knew him, and so they're asking the police to compare it to DNA that was taken at one of the scenes. There was no DNA left at the majority of the scenes of the Zodiac killer, of the crime
What
scenes.
can you tell us about the scene? There was no DNA at the majority of the scenes, Larry.
No DNA at the majority of the scenes, but he left saliva on the stamps that he licked, and so there's partial DNA.
Wow.
What? That,
that is strong.
Yeah.
So this case breakers, I think you may want to be in touch with them, Courtney. I feel that you and the case breakers play kind of in the same band, if you know what I mean. You know,
no.
You could harmonize with them.
I think that they're all a lot better than me at this.
Well, that's a good attitude to have. We could use a little bit more of that attitude around this place. Yeah.
But they
you
are
come in
a really
humble, but I
group.
think you share the same abiding interests.
Yeah,
so.
I have. Yeah, this is actually, if you can go back, sorry. This is for people that are watching. If you go up one.
Go back one. There you go.
Gary Francis Post. So that is
the Zodiac killer.
Yes, he was arrested for domestic violence, and I think this was one of the photos from that. And then on the right-hand side, this is a sketch that was provided after the murder of the taxi driver, as I mentioned, that the 3 teenagers who are across the street gave. There's actually a lot of conversation that Ted Cruz looks like the Zodiac killer, so that was a meme for some time that he might be the Zodiac killer. But I do think they've.
Well, the sketch doesn't look either like Ted Cruz or the Zodiac killer. Particularly.
Well,
I don't know, but it's tough. That's an older version of him now.
Yeah, that's an older.
So that's
version
a tough.
of him.
Maybe it was better at the time. That's kind of eerie, scary.
Yeah, it is. I can't believe it. It's
a guy who was so smack talking the cops.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yes.
It took so long,
Yes.
and they never really did apprehend him.
Yes, and he's claimed to kill 37 people. So there's certainly a lot of unfortunate murders that might have gone either not solved or not attributed to him. But he, as I mentioned, he stopped sending letters in 1974, and his last murder that was definitely connected to him was in 1969 with the cab driver in the Presidio.
So it's up to an official law enforcement agency is kind of what they're saying and what you're suggesting to actually make the official DNA matchup.
Yeah.
But it also sounds as though official matchups have been made sufficient to the point that he's on these lists of various law enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know the relationship between the FBI and the case breakers, but I have to imagine the case breakers are probably a thorn in their side.
Yeah, it's like enough with the case breakers. Right.
So I don't know how seriously they're going to take this, but we shall see.
Courtney, very well done. Kim, I and Albert will excuse the witness unless somebody has another question.
Well, I just want to let Courtney know I was thinking about you over the weekend because I found this documentary and started watching it, even though I don't usually click on such things, but I did, and I thought, oh, I get why Courtney's into this. It's called The Murder of God's Banker.
Oh, wow.
And it's from 2022, and it's about something that happened in the late 70s, early 80s, and 1982, I think was when the murder happened. And the man that was one of the main bankers for the Pope, for the Vatican, was found hanging from a bridge in London. And it goes into his murder.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Yeah,
suicide or a murder, but it's called The Murder of God's Banker, and it's a series, like a documentary series. You got to check it out.
You feel like you'd have job security with that.
Yeah,
but,
God's
maybe
banker.
No. I mean, being the banker for the Pope.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
It turns out, according to this documentary, they were connected to the mob, and it was connected to this secret Masonic group. It's really interesting.
Wow, that sounds very much up your alley.
I will, and I have to say, Calvin Wong, my other partner in life, he sent me so many great stories and links about the Zodiac Killer. I'm forever grateful for his support, and
Yeah, Calvin is a shadow producer.
Yes. And
There you
then
go.
I think it was Brian who sent me a link to this really interesting series that looks kind of like a combination of The Flight Attendant and Only Murders in the Building that stars Kelly Cuoco. But to that point, like she starts a podcast because there's a murder that happens in front of her. So anyway, maybe, maybe definitely
There's a
have to
show
watch
or
that.
movie coming up on Peacock, Lori says, about people who start a murder podcast.
Yep,
Can't
there
get to
we
it
go.
fast enough before Courtney leaves. Yeah,
I know it's a huge, it's a huge segment. I would say in
Oh, it's
pop
extreme.
culture,
There,
yeah.
you think just when you think there can't possibly be more murder podcasts. There,
the case
5 more are
breakers.
birth.
The
Yeah.
case breakers were the ones who found DB Cooper. And I was listening to a podcast with them, and they were like, well, now we're not invited to CooperCon anymore. And I thought, there's an entire event that thousands of people go to just about DB Cooper.
Now, was DB Cooper actually found?
I think they found out who he was. I don't think he was ever found.
Yeah,
but they
he dropped-
identified
right.
who he was.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
so.
for the next time.
Yep.
Good stuff, Courtney. Thank you for being
thank
here.
you. Thank
We
you so
love it.
much.
Courtney, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Murder
you. Thank you,
Mystery
Kim.
Monday.
Thank you, Albert.
On the Mark Thompson Show.
Wow, really cool. Yeah, I'm. Let me get this. The problem with this mic is that sometimes it misbehaves a little bit. So anyway, there you have it. Thank you, Courtney, and thank you, everybody. Smash the like button if you would, please, for Courtney.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Give it a smash thumbs up. Really does help us. We conclude the first hour. I have weed news in the second hour. I mean, significant weed news. I have news out of the East Bay. We have a lot of listeners and viewers in the San Francisco Bay Area. For those who don't know, like Oakland would be the East Bay. And Oakland actually is where the story comes from. And it's kind of interesting and a sign of the times, and it relates to immigration and a lot of things that are very much of the moment. So we'll touch on that as well in the next hour. If I have time, I'll get to something that broke over the weekend in That's Rich. But if I don't get to it today, I'll get to it tomorrow. And as I promised you in the second hour, Dr. Simon Whitney, the new book, From Oversight to Overkill, Inside the Broken System That Blocks Medical Breakthroughs and How We Can Fix It. He's a physician, a medical ethicist. I think, going to make for a really interesting conversation. So we'll do that this hour. Again, smash the like button if you
Smash it
would.
with your iron rod.
Mm-hmm. Kim's news next, and then, as I say, all those things still ahead.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Let's start with the default. President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy are set to resume talks on raising the debt ceiling today. This after the president tweeted he has proposed more than $1 trillion in spending cuts, and Republicans will have to compromise on some of their demands. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has repeatedly warned the U.S. could go into default if the debt ceiling is not raised by June 1st. A big warning coming out. Here's a picture of Florida. African Americans are being warned to stay away from the state of Florida. Over the weekend, the NAACP issued a formal travel advisory for the state. The organization cites what it calls the governor's very aggressive attempts to erase Black history and to restrict DEI programs in Florida schools. So he says Black people aren't safe in Florida. You got to stay away from there. A former U.S. Marine detained in Russia is remaining hopeful about a return home, and we hope that it is soon. This is Paul Whelan. He told CNN Sunday he is positive and confident the wheels are turning toward his release. He has been in a Russian jail since 2018. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison on an espionage charge that he denies. And New York Congressman George Santos is replacing his campaign committee treasurer with himself after she resigned just a few days ago.
Wow.
Don't worry, I'll take care of the money.
Yeah, the best person for the job is right here.
No.
Right, in my suit.
Don't let that guy
wild idea, but just like
no. I mean, if there's anyone who shouldn't be anywhere near the money, it's that guy.
Ain't it true?
Yes, but Mr. Santos has now replaced his treasurer after she quit with himself. Here, I think I have a picture of Mr. Santos. There he is, because you got to see the.
You want to see the dude? Liar, liar.
You're fired.
Is the
Liar, your pants are on fire.
We didn't elect his lies. Santos must go. It says George Santos, liar, liar. You are fired. Oh.
Of course, Santos was indicted a little over a week ago on 13 felony counts involving mismanagement of money. The charges include embezzlement, money laundering, and falsely receiving COVID unemployment funds. So,
wow.
yeah,
Well, that's pretty.
If you get it in order, you get extra points.
Oh, wow.
Make sure you put him in charge of the campaign funds. That's good.
Yeah.
Calling me a liar. Is that what you calling me?
Wow.
Yeah, a little bit. Wife of the Sonoma County Sheriff in trouble with the law. Sheriff Eddie Engram posted on Facebook Saturday that his wife was involved in a DUI crash early that morning in which her car hit a house. The house she hit was along Beaumont Way and did injure a person inside. He called Natasha Whittinghill's arrest appropriate. He noted the Santa Rosa Police Department is handling this investigation. Engram added he is concerned for his wife's well-being and the well-being of the person inside the home who got hurt as well. Target is recalling close to 5 million candles that could crack while burning and pose risk of injury. According to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the items could break and could cut or burn users. The retail giant fielded more than 100 reports of the candles cracking during use and six reports of injuries. Ow! The recall is for threshold glass jar candles in various scents and sizes, sold starting August of 2019.
That is brutal. You light the candle up. It's one of those relaxing kind of things. And then there's a crack and another crack. And then there's wax everywhere and scent everywhere and flame everywhere. Isn't that kind of it?
Yeah, it's fun,
crazy,
man.
Seriously, what the
Right.
No fun at all.
Before you know it, you're in a seriously what the F situation.
This was a kind of a fun thing. It didn't kind of pan out as planned, but the town of Kyle, Texas has failed in its effort to set the Guinness World Record for the largest gathering of people with the same name. The Gathering of the Kyles took place Sunday at Lake Kyle Park, about half an hour south of Austin. While more than 1,800 Kyles did show up, it wasn't enough. So far, the record is held by a gathering of more than 2,300 Ivans in Eastern Europe that took place in 2017. 2,300 Ivans versus 1,800 Kyles. That's a fail.
Wow.
There's never been anything like this.
They do a lot of that, though. I love those kinds of, everybody's named, Yeah. But those are the two top names, Ivan and Kyle.
Ivan's big in Russia, I guess.
Sure, Ivan is it's like Simon in England or Nigel, and you know what I mean? Those names in England are big, right?
It was the city's fourth attempt to see if they could get this world record, and its fourth failure as well.
Yeah.
No can do.
Well.
Yeah.
That was so awful, it was beyond description.
Yeah, there is Simon, yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show is crowdfunded, which means we rely on you. You can find the Patreon and PayPal links at our very special place online is themarkthompsonshow.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
That's wild news out of Florida that Kim had. Imagine that. I mean, literally telling members of the black community not to go to Florida because of DeSantis-related legislation and sweeping pronouncements. They are dry cleaning the history in many ways, changing the history of slavery, which is pretty much in your face in this country. I mean, it's part of the. So which person would punch me up instead of leaving that slide that says the Mark Thompson Show? Would that be Albert or Kim who does that?
I'll do it.
All right.
Oh,
I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I just noticed that it was still on there.
Sorry. I wasn't looking at the screen. I was looking at pictures of all the Kyles.
Well, that's a...
There's a lot of Kyles. Mostly white dudes, it turns out.
What a surprise. What a surprise that is. Smash the like button like a boss if you can
with your iron
throw
rod.
us a thumbs up. I have not hit you for any kind of finances today. They're all the Kyles.
Yeah, look at them all. They all have T-shirts that say Kyle.
If we could just get them all to subscribe, we'd be in, all we want is 11,000.
I just want to find
11,780.
780.
You saw, just apropos of that, apropos a ding, where the Attorney General in Georgia, who is handling the Trump investigation into that Georgia case, the 11,780 being part of it, that's what made me think of it, is now prescribing, in essence, for her staff to be working from home if they have to for a certain part of August, suggesting that it'll be the latter part of August. I think you should Google this. I'm just working this from memory, but essentially it is suggesting all of these various memos regarding work schedules and remote work that, excuse me, that August will be the month for something to happen in that Trump case.
Google
with
it.
the 11,780. Yeah. Animal rights groups condemning Bob Baffert, another racehorse dying. Bob Baffert is the champion trainer, but on his way to all these championships, another horse trained by Baffert was euthanized on the track at Pimlico Racecourse. That happened over the weekend. PETA called for Baffert, who's been linked with numerous horse deaths over the years, to be banned from Pimlico. The Humane Society said in a statement, there is an urgent need for reform. The tragic loss of this horse, is it having a meltdown at the 2023 Preakness, they're saying, coming after the 8 horse deaths prior to and since the Kentucky Derby. Wow. This, they continue, underscores the urgent need for sweeping reforms in the horse racing industry. It's time to prioritize horse safety, implement the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act doping program, and stop gambling with horse races' lives. That's according to the CEO of the Humane Society.
I guess I
That
don't understand
horse,
why the horses are dying. I mean, is it because they're just being worked to death, or is it because they're being shot up with medication, or what is it how are they being abused?
horses are shot up with all kinds of performance-enhancing medications or performance-enhancing drugs, and then they're called upon to run these races such that it is physically very difficult to sustain the kind of impact, the kind of velocity, et cetera, that they're called upon to sustain. This is my understanding. Mm-hmm. And physically, horses are big, heavy things on top of smaller legs and joints that just can't withstand that kind of demand. And so when you add the performance-enhancing drugs to the physiology of a horse, you end up with the prescription for their injury and then their euthanization, of course.
Oh, sad.
It is brutal, and that is why horse racing is viewed by many as an inhumane sport and brutal in that way. And you can certainly, the way that they're suggesting, when certain trainers are associated with this assembly line of death, you get the calls of the sort that we just heard from the Humane Society and PETA as well. You saw that the wrestler, the superstar Billy Graham died. I thought of you, Albert. He was the buff blonde wrestler before Hulk Hogan. Okay, the guy who sort of did that pro wrestling thing and steroided up, so he was a huge dude. He talked about the steroids. It's not like I'm busting some. And then he dyed his hair blonde. Isn't this right, Albert? This is exactly, I was reading all about him. I actually watched some of his matches over the weekend. And he called himself Superstar Billy Graham, right?
Yeah, I can't say I'm too familiar because it's a little out of
It's a little before your time, I think.
Yeah,
and mine
before
too.
my
Like, I'm
time.
not really that into it. He was 79 years old. But he influenced the style of future stars like Hulk Hogan and Jesse Ventura. You know it, brother.
At the time after in the 80s, they were all just these super buff. Like, there's no, you watch wrestling nowadays and they're all like athletic and they're not these type of burly, like Macho Man, Randy Savage types, right?
Right. He was an evangelist, this guy. I don't know if you want to put a picture on the... There's a picture in that article that I sent you. If you want to click on it, maybe you can get it going there. But I'll just real quick, I'll just round this out. Because I didn't know about him either. It's like just like one of these things that happens and you go, wow, I didn't even know about this guy. He really was sort of the progenitor of the Jesse Ventura. And there he is. He looks like Hulk Hogan, right?
Yeah.
And that was all steroids. So he's on the juice, looking big. That's dyed hair. He was an evangelist. All right, he was a Bible-thumping evangelist, and there was no money in it. I was reading his obit, and so he went into pro wrestling, and he took the name Superstar. He added that name at the beginning of his moniker associated with wrestling. He took it from Jesus Christ Superstar. Then he took his name from the Reverend Billy Graham. His real name was Coleman, wasn't that it?
Eldridge Wayne Coleman Jr.
Yeah, Eldridge Wayne Coleman Jr. But he took
Superstar Billy Graham is so much better.
It is. So that was him. Rest in peace at 79 years old. He believes that he's 6'4", 275 pounds, and he believes that the steroids ended his life early. So... and just speaking of people who are, 79 years old, 80 years old, we talk a lot about that in relation to the president.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Martha Stewart, 81 years old. She is the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue cover star.
What?
She is looking good at 81. She is on the cover of Sports Illustrated. It's a reminder that you can be vital and you can be together and you can be physically attractive, as you get older. She's not the first woman over 60 to appear on the cover. Mae Musk was 74. And Martha Stewart is going with it. It's, she's really owning it. She's excited about it. So it's weird that we, on the one hand, celebrate Martha Stewart on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and then on the other hand, we talk about Joe Biden being too old, and it's really about how vital you are, isn't it? It's not about how old you are. Now, you may say...
Martha. Look at her. Woohoo.
Yeah. You may... Yeah. Not a bad way to go.
Showing some boobage there, even.
Yes. And in fact, a listener viewer, Teresa, sent me something saying, Mark, we are too hung up and worried about age in this country. Some of the rulers, and she attached a list of the 8 oldest presidents in the world right now. Oh, in recent history, sorry. They're all in their 80s, and they were, some of them, incredibly productive and vital. She says, we're too hung up and worried about age in this country, Mark. Some of these rulers were in their late 80s to 90s, and some excellent in their old age. Shimon Peres from Israel is one. They remain vital because they have a purpose. Let the good ones do their good until they can't anymore. Side note, my husband, Parks, is almost 80 and still playing music with me.
Awesome.
He's more knowledgeable than anyone I know when it comes to history and politics and would have been a great president. He's highly intelligent and well-informed and can take on the most right-wing conservatives and put them in their place. We live in Orange County, so we're surrounded by those people. Some of them are our friends. That's the way it should be. I'm just saying Biden is still fighting for us and gets things done, and you may read this on the air if you like. Well, it is certainly true that it's about the individual. It is not about the age. And I think there are people who would ding Biden because he misspeaks or but he's been misspeaking for a long time.
He's got a speech impediment. That's not age. That's a speech impediment.
Yeah.
No.
So I concede that, Biden isn't as vital perhaps, and he doesn't have the elasticity mentally that he might have had 10 years ago, but I don't think that that's a deal buster right now. I mean, given the alternatives, I don't see it as a deal buster. I mean, it's not a Dianne Feinstein situation, might be, if you want a contemporary example, also from the Democratic side of the aisle.
I wonder how that whole Martha Stewart thing went down, though. Like, I wonder, did they call her and she said, "You want me to what?" Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. Or did her people call them and say, "Hey, Martha wants to put on a bathing suit and sit for portraits"?
Yeah.
Maybe Snoop
I don't know
Dogg
exactly how it went down, but
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
Maybe. Probably on the shoot. They usually do get you pretty sauced for those shoots. They really do.
Really?
Yeah.
You think she's loaded?
When I used to do shoots, even for Kron, like when we were, back in doing those shoots where you're there posing with the other NBC people, like, Come On Along or,
everyone's
right,
back to back.
Must See TV, whatever. They always had the white wine pour, pretty heavy pretty heavy pour. Yeah. Quick note on something going on in the East Bay, as I was saying.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Employees at a Popeyes in Oakland picketing this week after teen workers, including one who was 13, alleged that they were pressured to work long, late hours in violation of child labor laws. Our employer has violated almost every law put in place to protect young workers like us, two of the younger employees wrote in a statement. Josh Mara Romero, 17, and Carla Palma Mendoza, who turned 18 on Friday, filed a complaint with the California Labor Commissioner and California Division of Occupational Safety and Health, OSHA, claiming the violations at Popeyes are violations of child labor laws. They were often assigned shifts much longer than 4 hours, well beyond 10 p.m. on school nights, they are alleging. The legal limit for workers their age is 10 o'clock. You've got to get them home. The two employees who were in high school while working at the restaurant said they often were asked to stay until 11:30 at night or work 6.5 hours on school nights, sometimes without the required break times, they're saying. What's that, Kim?
I don't think it's legal for 13-year-olds to be working.
No, it's not. And the complaint includes details about a 13-year-old employee who on multiple occasions worked more than 40 hours a week, including staying until midnight on school nights. You're not allowed at 13 to work during school days. So this is interesting. After the complaint was filed, the Popeyes complaint, and before employees took to the picket line, which happened Thursday and Friday, Popeyes shuttered that location. So the Popeyes in Oakland that was being picketed no longer. They say, Popeyes, the home office, we will not tolerate any violation of employee laws, and if any of these allegations prove true, we will take action against the franchisee. Remember, these are franchises owned by individuals, right? They're not owned by Popeyes. Popeyes is the franchisor. The last thing I will say about underage workers, because you're seeing now a trend nationwide to change child labor laws. We've done a little bit of it here, but you may be aware of it. It's going on in many states. Iowa among them. Nebraska, I think, is one of them too. Oklahoma, maybe. But you can find a swath of states that is looking to change and roll back, meaning make it looser, those restrictions on child labor laws than it is now. And they've successfully done it in some of these states I've just mentioned. And the reason for that is dovetailing with illegal immigration. You not only have this gray market of workers that are supporting slaughterhouses and agricultural work, but you also have an underclass, really, right? Desperate to be in this country, desperate for work, who have children, also desperate for work, also desperate to remain in this country. And they occupy those jobs that are tough to fill. I'm talking about slaughterhouses and work in agricultural environments that are not too great. So the Popeyes situation is one thing, but it's part of a much bigger problem and a growing problem in this country. But if you think they're rolling back those child labor laws for any other reason, no, it's to help feed the gray market economy that is a big part of the state economies nationwide. So, smash the like button like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
It helps us in the YouTube algorithms. You know, YouTube does this thing. It's kind of weird. I'm grateful to be on YouTube. They do this thing where almost every show we do, they strike it.
Why? What are we doing wrong?
For AI. It's some craziness with AI. So what I have to do is watch that. And when they strike it, I then ask for a human review, because then they'll go through and they'll say, oh, there's nothing strikeable here, and they'll let it pass. And so that's what I do. Almost every day I do it. And we get, then we get the approval, but it takes 24 hours, and that, cuts into YouTube revenues, et cetera. So it's sort of a weird thing. But what does help us, I mentioned it in the context of YouTube, is if you give us a thumbs up, it doesn't cost anything. And that helps us in the other bizarre part of this new YouTube world, which is the algorithms that are related to viewership and related to thumbs up. The other thing that doesn't cost you anything is if you share it. So if you share this on Facebook, you share it elsewhere, it helps get the word out, and the more subscribers we get, the more we grow the audience, the better it is. We're doing very well, and all we want is 11,780.
I just want to find 11,780.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's not so hard. We're like 500 away. So let's make something good happen. Coming up, I'm very excited about what I think will be a controversial and dynamic conversation with Dr. Simon Whitney, physician, medical ethicist. He's got a new book, and I'm excited to get into all the things related to oversight and the medical world. We'll do it next. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. A judge is entering a not guilty plea for the man accused of the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. The plea was entered for Brian Koberger during a court appearance today after his attorney said he would be standing silent. The mayor of Uvalde, Texas, says he is pushing for answers since no one has been accountable 1 year after a deadly school shooting claimed the lives of 19 students and 2 teachers. Mayor Don McLaughlin saying an ongoing feud between the city and the Uvalde district attorney has made it difficult to access records. At least 5 officers who were there that day have either been fired or have resigned. The bill banning abortions in Nebraska at 12 weeks and gender transitioning medical treatment for minors is now law. Republican governor in Nebraska, Jim Pillen, signed the bill at the state capitol today. The abortion restrictions include exceptions for rape, incest, and medical emergencies. Opponents say lawsuits will be filed immediately against that bill. The founder of a college financial aid startup pleading not guilty to charges of defrauding the biggest bank in the U.S. Charlie Javis is accused of duping J.P. Morgan Chase into buying her now shut down college financial aid company called Frank. Federal prosecutors say Javis falsely and dramatically inflated the number of Frank customers to get the bank to buy the startup. The 31-year-old entrepreneur claimed her company lined up more than 4 million student customers. The actual number was about 300,000.
Wow,
4 million,
it's
300,000.
just amazing. And when you see something like that happen, the idea somehow that J.P. Morgan can be duped in that way.
Yeah.
It was what we were talking about last week when we were just kind of reflecting on the situation with Theranos and how Elizabeth Holmes had essentially convinced the VC community in Silicon Valley and the former Secretary of State, George Shultz, that this is a viable technology and an incredibly robust company that was about to break through and revolutionize essentially the way you did blood testing. It's a remarkable fraud. And here when you see they did a thing last night on 60 Minutes about how we're particularly senior citizens are being targeted in these various frauds that are getting more sophisticated all the time. I've told you my mother was defrauded out of all this money. It happened multiple times. But I mention it because when I see a sophisticated group of investors like J.P. Morgan also, fall victim to this kind of thing. I get it. It's a different kind of fraud, but it's a remarkable fact that these supposedly sophisticated investors could fall victim to it.
Not only did they fall victim, they paid her $175 million for Frank in 2021.
Wow.
Yeah. Uh-oh. NFL legend Tom Brady, one step closer to owning part of the Las Vegas Raiders. Reports say Brady's purchase of a stake in the team from owner Mark Davis has been agreed to and sent to the league for approval. Brady recently also bought a share of the WNBA's Las Vegas Aces. That is also owned by Davis. Brady announced his retirement in February after playing 23 seasons in the NFL and winning 7 Super Bowls. He is set to debut on as Fox's lead NFL analyst in 2024.
He's so handsome.
He is pretty cute. And lastly, Lego is celebrating Pac-Man with the release of a more than 2,000-piece set. That'll take the kids some time. It's based on the 1980s arcade game. It features light bricks to lighten up the coin slot. The Lego set doesn't work as an actual gaming system, but the company says fans will love the retro game details. So the new Lego Pac-Man set is on store shelves. This show is crowdfunded. That means we rely on you to fund the show. You can find the Patreon and PayPal links at themarkthompsonshow.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson? 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 Who's Mark Thompson?
We are excited to have you here. It is the beginning of the week, the last 20 or 25 minutes of the show. And we're excited to have this guy on. He's, wow, the credits that this gentleman has are substantial. He's a real doctor. And Dr. Simon Whitney is his name. He's a physician, medical ethicist, law school grad, studied the International Review Board system, including the origins, the victories it's had, I'm sure, in keeping certain things that might have been damaging to the public off the market, and also its failures, perhaps keeping things that might have been helpful to the general public away from the general public. But this guy's career took him to Stanford Law School. And as I say, the Stanford Center for Biomedical Ethics is where he did a fellowship, and so much of his work goes back to that place. So his new book is particularly intriguing. From Oversight to Overkill, Inside the Broken System That Blocks Medical Breakthroughs and How We Can Fix It. How about it for Dr. Simon Whitney? Doctor, hello, sir.
Hello, Mark. Good to be with you.
It is so intriguing. I think especially since we've all become these, maybe not armchair doctors, but desperate for medical information with COVID hitting. and we were scrambling for different sources, maybe the best way to put it, everything from YouTube platform shows to blogs to our own personal doctors. We're just trying to learn all we could about, what COVID was and what these various coronaviruses were and what that vaccine was. There was the Johnson & Johnson, there was all of these different ones. So I guess I mentioned that in the ramp up to our conversation to say, wow, I mean, you've met your moment, because when it comes to questions about medical ethics and what's appropriate for the general public, it seems as that this is that moment in time.
I sure hope so. And it's funny you mentioned these problems because during the pandemic, we saw the collision of both the first major pandemic in our time and of a pandemic of medical misinformation, disinformation. Those two things together killed hundreds of thousands more people than would have died otherwise.
The mRNA vaccine was this technology that, as I was reading, was really something that was being prepared or being researched in relation to things like cancer. And it was repurposed in this way during the time of great need to sort of stop the bleeding with the COVID numbers.
That's right. It was on the rack with no obvious immediate use until, boom, COVID came into view, and there was an immediate use. And to have a vaccine so soon after COVID appeared, that was very close to miraculous. The reason we got that vaccine so rapidly, was because of Operation Warp Speed, which swept aside all the usual barriers to drug development and just shoot it through those gates quite rapidly. So my question, one of the questions in my book is, why is it that we don't have Operation Warp Speed for heart disease or cancer or Alzheimer's? These instead proceed at horse and buggy speed, and the delay is costing lives.
It's so interesting that you mentioned this, because I got an email just last week about Alzheimer's. I think we're going to have her on tomorrow. There's a big protest it's in San Francisco, about Alzheimer's drugs being kept off the market, even though they do show some promise. This is from, and the crippling nature of Alzheimer's for families and for the victims of Alzheimer's themselves. In a sense, entire families are victims. I wonder about that. I mean, so give me an example of what's happening. Is it the institutions of government? Why aren't those things being rushed through? And how promising are these medications?
Well, the problem with the current Alzheimer's drug, the new one that was recently approved, was that it helps a little, sometimes, in some people, for a lot of money. We need better drugs than that. It's that simple. Or better prevention methods, even better. The thing that's slowing these down is complicated, and there are many parts. My focus is on one particular part that nobody has ever heard of, the IRB system, as you said in your intro. And IRB, there are IRBs, these committees that oversee research and will give the green light to only ones they feel are appropriate. There are IRBs at every institution that does research across the country, and they are supervised by a federal agency that nobody's ever heard of. The FDA, which supervises drug and device development, has thousands of employees and a budget in the billions. The OHRP, the little agency that supervises this particular branch of medical research, has, I think, 26 employees and a budget in the millions. So they're barely on the radar, but they slow an important part of America's medical research efforts, and they do so in a way that we should all be appalled by.
I'm going to follow up on that in a moment. I just want to mention regular viewers and listeners to the show know that we rotisseried that Alzheimer's drug that you're talking about. It was laid bare how little in the way of advancement it actually provided and how expensive it was, just to the point you were making. By the way, on that stuff, anything with a cognitive diminution of any sort is so difficult to characterize in research, because a lot of it is, the analysis and results of this research are so interpreted, that is to say, like, who can tell whether I'm doing a little bit better based on various testing, right? So right away with something like Alzheimer's, and as I say, anything involving cognitive challenges, I think the research alone can be flawed from the very start.
Well, it's difficult to do good research on something as subtle as cognitive decline. When I was in practice, I would regularly see men in their 40s or 50s who would say, "Doc, my memory's failing." I would say, "You poor thing, what's wrong?" And they would say, "When I was in college, I didn't have to crack a book. I could listen to a lecture, know everything, and just write it down in the exam. And then, I could look at a book, I remember what page it was on. Now I have to read the darn thing to remember." I would say, "Get out of here and don't forget the copay," because their cognition had not declined to a point that I felt sorry for them.
All right, so let me go back now then and do the follow-up on what you were just saying about this government agency and about the governmental process. So you were mentioning this smaller agency. This is a place where stuff gets jammed up. Is that your point?
Yes. The system was set up for a very good reason. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment, in which hundreds of black men in Alabama were followed closely by government doctors, but never given medication for the syphilis they knew they had. Of these men, many died. This was deliberate. I mean, they weren't given syphilis by the government. The government did nothing to treat them, even after penicillin became available. Okay, so this is the worst experiment ever conducted on American soil. In an attempt to make sure this never happened again, the government set up a system designed to protect research subjects. And that was its only goal. And when I present it that way, it sounds reasonable. But the problem is there's a balance to be made, as there is with almost every government intervention, between protecting research subjects and letting research happen. And if you protect research subjects not only against major risks like syphilis untreated, but against minor risks like bruising at the site of a blood draw, or pains or inconveniences that go away rapidly, and you don't let people even choose to undergo these risks for the sake of research, then research is slowed dramatically. You mentioned the Alzheimer's example. Well, millions of people are suffering with Alzheimer's, and many millions more are looking at their parents suffering with it, knowing it's genetic, and trembling in their boots. Will the IRB community let research in Alzheimer's proceed uninhibitedly? No, because there's a concern that you might not be mentally capable of giving your full consent to the new treatment that's being tested.
Wow.
This is a concern. It's not a crazy concern, but the result is that it thwarts people who, when they were still cognizant, would have been very happy to sign the consent form, and whose kids are very happy to say, "Sure, this new treatment seems like it's not that different from what else is available. We'll give it a try." No, this is all tangled up in a complicated web, and it's hard to get it done because we're trying so hard to protect subjects from harm, we've forgotten that all of us need better care.
I always feel as though if something doesn't make sense, like the length of time it takes to get a drug or some kind of improvement to market or to actually help people, that it's about money. How much of this problem that we're having, and I get it, you detail it in your book. I mean, these are myriad problems, right? From oversight to overkill. That institution of oversight is made up of all of these, as you've just suggested, these agencies and people we don't even know exist. How much of it, though, falls under the category of money?
That's a great question, because money is usually the explanation. It's the explanation for why medicine in general has gotten so profoundly screwed up nowadays, because somebody discovered that you could turn a patient into an ATM. And the moment somebody discovered that, we were all in deep trouble. So back to my system and the problems with it. Actually, here, I think it's an exception to your rule. I think that the problem here is fear. Fear of the federal hammer. Because if an IRB steps out of line in the smallest way, in retrospect, the federal hammer can still fall. And when it does, all research funding at that institution is held up until things are cleared up, which can cost millions of dollars a day. So that's why institutions are so very risk averse. And that's why an IRB made up of reasonable people may make ridiculous decisions and slow down research for no good reason at all.
How is the IRB and who comprises these various review institutions, how is that decided?
It's typically a dozen people or thereabouts. The number can vary. A medical school will have an IRB, or perhaps 2 or 3 if it does a lot of research. They're appointed by the vice dean for research to serve for as long as the institutional reviews provide. And these dozen or so people consider proposals for research, and they say, this one can go, this one we're going to prohibit, and this one needs to have a revised consent form that's more clear. At least that's the theory. What happens in practice is they look at each proposed research and say, what could possibly go wrong with this? Well, let's imagine something. I'll give you the example that I think is most illustrates the problem. We don't want people to be given syphilis or to have syphilis untreated. We don't want people to have Alzheimer's untreated if there is a treatment. But these are not the risks that IRBs usually worry about. Let's think about a guy doing a physiology experiment. The physiology is how the body works. You've seen those photos of an athlete on a treadmill with a nose clips and a tube leading oxygen down and something across his chest measuring exertion. That's how we understand better how the body responds to altitude, low pressure, hard work, all these various things. So one of the early manuals for how IRB should think said, look at experiments like this. You might think there is no risk there, but actually, it's actually more risky than you would imagine. Well, the athlete getting off the treadmill could stumble and get a black eye by hitting his eye against something. Well, that doesn't seem like such a big deal, but think about the black eye. The black eye could lead to him being turned down for a social opportunity, or he could be passed over for employment in favor of another candidate who interviewed without a black eye, or it could be legal. This could happen from participating in the experiment. The police could make a connection between his black eye and the neighbor who is the subject of a brutal assault that left her comatose. This is not the risks of participating in research. This is a fantasy world. And if it were in a sci-fi novel, I would think it was entertaining. But since it's helping guide these IRBs make their decisions, it harms us all.
You know, it's just so interesting as you draw it all out like that to think about the tremendous latitude. And I suppose this is the implication, and I can't wait to get into your book. The implication is the latitude and license you've given these IRBs, these review boards, these people to suppress information, to prevent its release, and to green light information. It's and you can suppress it in kind of the scenario that you just described, or you can have others. And it's interesting because I see the clamor over the suppression of information. Again, this goes back to this moment in time over the last 3 years where, you suppress the information about masks, you in the medical community, or Dr. Fauci, you suppress the information about how you have a monetary interest in these medications, in these drugs. About mRNA, the guy who created mRNA, you've suppressed the information about what he's saying. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as you know, is coming forward with all these. Again, I don't mean to, it's not like all roads lead back to this, but this has just been our recent experience, which is why I feel that your book is so applicable to our recent experience. You're trying to balance, right, in the information against releasing things that could be harmful to the public and misinterpreted by the public.
It's always a question of balance. And if we had balance, we'd be better off. When we focus only on risk, it's like driving a car with 2 brakes and no gas pedal. You're not going to go very far.
The Oversight to Overkill. It's From Oversight to Overkill. The book is called Inside the Broken System That Blocks Medical Breakthroughs and How We Can Fix It. So, Doctor, you actually do address in this book the solutions to this broken system. In our last minute or so, can you just speak to how difficult that is. I feel as though we are in a country that is laboring through so many things that are both broken and getting broken. Also, it just seems as though some of these mountains are too tough to climb. How do you handicap some of the ways that you can fix this broken system that you identify?
Well, the broken system requires a change in federal law. You may have heard that politics is somewhat polarized now. I'm sure you have that. Okay. So this is one area in which, I've never met a Republican that didn't care about heart attacks. I've never met a Democrat that didn't care about cancer. So this is one area in which they can agree that if we had a common sense system, similar to the system we actually had 50 years ago, we can solve this problem and move on with our other issues.
I think lastly about this judge, and I'm not asking for your politics here at all. I don't know what your politics are. But when I see judges on the bench weighing in on the efficacy and safety of medications, it strikes me as something beyond the pale. I mean, these are people who have, I guess, great training in jurisprudence, but they don't have any training necessarily, certainly not the training required to evaluate the efficacy or safety of a medication. I feel as though our country's going the wrong direction, sort of agenda-driven on some of these medications.
In college, the people who are turned off by numbers are turned off by the idea of human feces, generally tend toward the law. People who don't not bother about these things go to medicine. And we have a system set up to approve drugs by medical experts in ways that they have worked on for years. And the judges could certainly step in if there's an egregious problem, but no such problem happened here.
Yeah. Dr. Simon Whitney, from oversight to overkill, inside the broken system that blocks medical breakthroughs and how we can fix it. Really intriguing stuff. Looking forward to getting into it and loved our conversation. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Mark. My pleasure.
Dr. Simon Whitney, everybody. Yeah, good stuff.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, I mean, his book has met its moment, We'll have the book name and everything in the description, and we'll break that conversation out separately, so you'll be able to access it as, if you want to push it on, let's say, to a family member or friend or whatever, you can push it on as a separate video. Albert will do that by the end of the day today. You'll have that. So good stuff. Now, I wanted to, there it is.
The Mark Thompson
I wanted
Show.
to wrap up by asking, there's some good, Vicky in Sausalito, want to thank her for a contribution today. We're crowdfunded. Yeah, big shout out, Vicky.
Big shout out.
Yeah. Looking forward to the medical oversight conversation. It was really good.
Yeah,
As I say, we're breaking it out in a separate conversation. Thanks for the 20, Vicky. My old stomping ground, Sausalito.
I bet it's pretty in Sausalito today.
Go over the Golden Gate Bridge. Get off of that Spencer Avenue exit.
Speaking of Spencer, Spencer Christian will be in this week. So yeah, that's something to look forward to. So thank you for that. Elwin, big shout out.
Big shout out.
Hey, Elwin.
Happy Monday to Mark, Kim, and the crew. Thank you, Elwin. Still the coolest name. Appreciate $10. Yeah. Can you play music and music videos, Al Nonifus is asking in a super chat, from the Internet Archive? The music on there is public domain. I ask you, Albert, what is the answer to that?
I'd have to check, but usually if they're a famous artist, the record label or their company, or they will always get a piece of it, and that'll make all of our videos copyrighted. But I'll look into it.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. And Kelly, thank you so much.
Big shout out.
Big shout out to Kelly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
For a 5 spot.
Kelly's picture kind of freaks me out a little bit. It looks like is it an alien or a white face? Like
yeah, some kind of alien. Yeah, alien-ish, alien adjacent. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get over the freak out though when I get to the contribution.
That's nice.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah. We are crowdfunded, of course, and that's, I mention it. Try not to mention it too much. But we do have to mention it because that's how we stay on the air. So you can go to themarkthompsonshow.com, click the Patreon or PayPal link, join our community if you're already part of our community. A couple of you have been so magnificently generous and upped your monthly contribution. Again, themarkthompsonshow.com. Click Patreon or PayPal, and you can be part of our family that does support this show. I'll mention a super sticker from Ren. Look for $20. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Yes. Thank you, Ren. Thank you so much, Ren. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And
Thank you so much.
Really, that's what I and what was I saying? I've rather lost my thought, Albert. Do you recall? Was it a... I know what it was. It was a general thanks to everybody who joined us today. We had some good stuff today, as I mentioned. The conversation with the doctor will break out separately. The conversation with Courtney on Mark's Murder Mystery Monday, that'll be broken out separately. Albert's pictures, if you missed them, they are at the beginning of the show from his trip to Korea. Very, very cool conversation. Tomorrow, David K. Johnston. There are a bunch of things happening at the federal level I want to talk to him about. I'll touch on the debt situation as well. My pick is a photo I took of graffiti art when I lived in San Jose, is the answer to your question from Kelly. Yeah. And Spencer Christian joins this week as well. So much to do. Oh, and
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
We'll follow up on that Alzheimer's drug tomorrow, the one that is not really maybe prematurely celebrated, but we'll talk more about it tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.